Hello, welcome
Evening.
to November Foxtrot. Now, two things that you will first off notice. One, I don't have my normal background. I am. Sorry,
On
just read that Rage
holiday.
is. If they are on time or early again, I'm unsubscribing. I signed up for tardiness. So yeah, I'm basically on holiday at the moment. So please don't rob my house. But the microphone, Andy and I have no way of testing currently when there's only two of us because Lance isn't able to join us tonight. We can't test the microphones between the two of us. So
No.
please let us know if the audio is cack, and we will do what our absolute best to try and fix that.
He'll twiddle his knob.
Yes. There's a knob on the front I can tweak. The other thing as well is that my internet may cut out because I am utilizing EE hubs.
Free internet.
Yes, well, it's not
It's
free.
not
I have
free.
paid for it. No, I have paid for it. But my internet may cut out, so apologies. I will come back as quick as possible.
I'll still be here though. I hope, because our internet
Yes.
died last night. So
this could be a fun show.
Yeah.
Two of us just get dropped off. So hi Roscoe, hi Rage, Pegasus, Carl, Steve, aka Panama, Fat Pigeon. I still love that name. Rage, Les, Daniel. Good evening. Welcome to the show.
Good evening, all.
Tonight we're going to be talking about the costs of MilSim. So looking at the financial impact for starting out, but then also things to consider going forward. And I'd be interested to open up to see what people's experiences are on possibly kind of the money pits of Airsoft and MilSim. So obviously we've all got our rifles and things like that. Jigglypuff Gus says anyone could drop out at any time. A podcast with a sense of danger.
Ooh, it could just be you guys chatting to yourselves for a little while.
Just every once in a while, we just
and
then we're back.
Talk amongst yourselves for a little while.
I don't want to mess about with it too much because I might actually break it.
Don't press buttons.
No. So we want to be hearing from you guys as to what you kind of foresee as money pits of MilSim. So, for example, rifts are obviously the major one. Other things that you could consider is things like night vision, thermal.
Rifts you should already really have, I would have thought.
No, but I think it's still
because you're kind of transitioning over from. I don't know many. There's a very small handful of people that have just gone. I want to do airsoft. I'm doing MilSim. There's a very finite group of them, and to be fair, they are ballsier than me.
Yeah,
but I think that by the time most people transition from going into MilSim, I think most people have already been skirmishing for a little while.
See, I don't think skirmishing is the issue. I think it's the change up of factions and roles and bits and pieces like that. And
buying secondary weapons, that's a problem.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then the other thing to consider as well is the fact that you tend to go down this route of realism. So I know an awful lot of people that started off in MilSim that just went with AEGs and things like that, and now they're all on the old MWS bandwagon, which I don't have the sound effects for this week.
I'll do it for you. MWS.
So I think there's an element like that. So for example, say that you get into MilSim, you do a lot of NATO force type events. You've got your absolute classic M4 style platform, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, I really like playing Op4. I'm going to have to get myself an AK. And I think that's where you start going down the route of, drug cartels, or what little sneaky weapons can I get as a drug cartel?
There's especially with Blue 4, you've got specific roles that have a specific if you're a support gunner, you tend to run an LMG. You can have a grenadier, which normally has the launcher. Medic would normally carry, I'd say, probably an M4 or a carbine sort of style weapon. And then you've got different roles within that as well. So you might have a breacher, so you've got a shotgun, like a bloke carrying a shotgun. You might have there's so many different roles within that. You are buying secondary weapons because I've got an M4, an AK, but then I've got a Rattler, which is my little CQB gun, and then I've got 2 LMGs, one for Op4, and so I see your point. It does add up.
Yeah,
I've still only got one pistol though,
for the moment. I mean, I think the thing with CQB platforms and everything like that is that ultimately, with there is a distinct lack of CQP venues around the country, aren't there? Really, you know, I mean, Longmoor for a long time wasn't used quite as much. Obviously, there was the whole COVID and then Ukraine and everything like that. You've obviously got like HQ Airsoft up in Driffield. That's a really good CQB style venue, but it still has a lot of outdoor gaming area. So CQB platforms aren't really essential, I would say. You've still got like a lot of long gun capability there.
And you've got the Rift, just saying that I'm
well,
currently
that's
building.
I was going to come into that. Obviously, Rift has started up a CQB site. You've obviously got South Coast CQB. I think like the
I think there's one in Milton Keynes. There's the one in Milton Keynes. I can't remember the name of it. The one with the helicopter slapped into the middle. I think they classing themselves as CQB. I think it's becoming more popular because a lot of the lands.
It's a heck of a lot easier to have a CQB site than a big site. Let's be fair.
Yeah, because but also as well, like a lot of the MOD sites are.
That Invicta Black site. That was the one I was thinking of.
Yeah, they're being sold on. They're being sold on for houses. So we're like housing development. So a lot of good sites like HQ. What was the other one that recently went? The one that BritTac run a lot of events on. My blind's gone blank. Someone help. No, it was the one. Can't remember. Someone will, I'm sure, remind me. But that was another building, like that was another RAF base that had buildings and everything in it. But that's all been turned into houses. And I think that's the way that it's going. I think it's going to be harder and harder to get woodland sites. Unless you've already got woodland, it's going to be a lot harder to keep hold of them.
I mean, a lot of
and HS2's killed probably about 4 or 5 sites, I think.
Yeah. A lot of the sites generally tend to be kind of in that middle ground, though, don't they? So, you know, woodlands, you've got some good woodland sites, but they're not necessarily the biggest. And obviously, they're probably typically used for skirmish games. So you've got kind of CQB kill houses that are kind of been built up in there and kind of buildings like that. But it's not really a proper CQB facility per se.
No.
And then vice versa, you know, with the CQB sites, they're great in terms of you've got that proper close quarter stuff, but there is no real scope to then have that kind of building to building exchange. So, for example, like Longmoor, and Longmoor's not even the best example of that. I would probably say Driffield's probably the better example of kind of a building to building assault, because the Longmoor buildings are effectively just houses. So we're not talking mass complexes of corridors and rooms, etc.
HQ's pretty good.
Exactly. So Driffield, that you got that building, you get into that building, you can then have a proper firefight through that building,
and then skip over to the next one, which is a good way of doing it.
The only thing with HQ Driffield is obviously the risk of falling through the floor.
Yeah, you just got to watch where you're.
Risks. But
Camp Sparta, right, that was it.
Camp Sparta,
thank you, Sarah.
Jail.
Camp Sparta was the one that I was thinking of. That that was the same sort of layout. Like that was an old RAF or army complex, and that's all gone now.
Yeah,
sad.
Anyway, let's move on from the loss of airsoft sites. I feel like we need to do an in memorandum.
A new one's opening. A new one's opening soon in October, end of October. So, see you guys there.
Yeah. So, other than CQB sites and bits and pieces like that, we're going to be talking about the financial impact of MilSims. So, we'll assume that everyone's obviously got their kind of fundamental airsoft kit, and then we'll talk about the kind of the basic information and principles that you need to kind of get into, and then we'll also kind of dip into the more leveling up stuff as well. So, we're not just going to cater to on this episode newer players. We'll obviously talk about some of the more veteran players as well, and some of the things that you could be looking to purchase kind of within your bits of kit. So do you want to start off with shelters? We love talking a bit about shelter systems.
Yeah.
So do you want to talk about hammocks first? Because I feel that this is a vastly underutilized shelter system.
Everyone should have a hammock. Sorry, buy a hammock. If you're doing a woodland event, just take a hammock. Don't take anything else. Unless it's so I say that, but obviously if you're trying to do low profile sneaky beaky stuff, don't take a hammock. Because you sit in there 4 foot above the ground swinging in the wind merrily. It's not very but no, hammocks are a great way to start out, I think. If you're going to woodland games or somewhere where you can tie off the hammock, it's a cheap and easy way of a sleeping system. But again, you still need a basher because you still need to keep unless you buy one of the ones that are a little bit more expensive, and they have the canvas already built onto them and things like that. But a hammock is a good way to start off without any without much costing, I think, because you can pick a decent hammock up for about 25 quid, I think.
Yeah.
If not less.
Yeah.
It's small, it's lightweight, it can fit in your Bergen. I keep an emergency one in my Bergen at all times, like literally underneath my basher. Like, I've got my basher compartment, and then I've literally got a small little hammock rolled up ready to go. So if I can use it, I will.
Yeah, I mean, I think the key there is obviously with a hammock setup, you've still got a basher because you need some.
Yeah.
Unless you do have a really fancy hammock setup that's kind of all built in one, then you're going to need your basher, which can double up as a ground cover as well. So,
yeah,
you know, if hammocks and sleeping on the ground are basically the same thing for all intents and purposes, the only difference is obviously your sleep setup at that point.
Yeah.
Rage is right. Some people obviously don't get on with hammocks. I've had some personal damage done from a hammock the first time I used them, but I must confess they are, you know, one of the better night's sleeps that you have. There's certain things that you need to kind of learn about hammocks. So in terms of sort of underquilts and things like that, and making sure you've got your insulation beneath you, how to set them up appropriately. You're obviously stuck with a hammock needing something solid that you can obviously put your hammock between that is roughly the right distance. It is a bit of a nightmare if you rock up to an open field and then go, right, where are you setting up?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, there's no trees. But you
or
can
if you turn up and some fuckers nicked your 2 trees that you always use.
You can put them up between cars and other hard structures as well.
Yeah.
So
it's like at HQ. HQ that time I went up with 2 wall hooks and a drill, and I literally just drilled my own hooks and just had my hammock set up at the end of the room.
Which I still think was an interesting method, being again knowing Driffield how stringent those walls are.
That is why I went for the corner of the building, which is always stronger. I didn't have much rock either because I literally went quite close to so I was like this most of the night. But
Ray says, I love a hammock, but I used to climbing with a lad that absolutely hated them. Like he woke up early, so he had more hours in the day to hate them. That's fair enough. I mean, hammocks. I think the only thing I ever found with a hammock is when you're hammocking in a storm, or not even a storm, just a windy night, and the trees are going, and you're like, ooh, you're just swinging, and it's nice and comfy for you.
That's why I go for trees. I go for trees that you can't put your arm around. Because if that falls down, I'm dead anyway. So, but no, I think also as well. I think also as well. I think with hammocks, there, like you said, there is a knack to it. There's little tricks that you pick up. So I've had like 3 or 4 hammocks now, and my best one is the DD tarp double lightweight one. And I would say that always go for a double size one. You can never fit 2 people in a double hammock sleeping as doubles.
Certainly not 2 of us.
No, like literally you just squash yourself together anyway and it becomes a very cozy night. But a double one is absolutely brilliant. Like you can, and also sleeping at an angle, so you don't sleep directly in line with your ropes basically. And if you sleep slightly to the side in a double, you can proper spread out. Like I sleep like starred in the double. Best night's sleep ever. Mrs. wouldn't let me put hooks in the house.
Rage says, I reckon me and Mike could fit into a double hammock easy. We'll give it a go, mate. I've got a double.
Oh,
double
yeah,
hammock.
you can fit in.
Down. Yeah.
You just end up being like that in the morning. All right,
Mike. So yeah, I mean, just bear in mind, if you are going to go hammock camping, please do suitable research on hammocks. We've talked about it in sleep systems, I think, in other episodes. So by all means, go and check out sleep systems on our YouTube. You can just search that in the YouTube. Because if you get it wrong, you will get cold, basically. Yeah. James says, why does it look like you have a vacuum-packed Grogu and hooked him onto your wall, Andy?
Because this was a balloon filled with helium, and the deal was that he would go in the bin when he touches the floor. So now he's pinned to the wall, so he can't touch the floor, and he can't get thrown away, because I feel bad for throwing Grogu in the bin, and my missus is going livid. So that is the story to it, and he's slightly deflated now, but he's never going to touch the floor. So
you'll just find bits of flooring are just lifted up in that corner. Pony Tony says, financial impact, I'll never recover from this hobby.
Yeah,
it's not a hobby, it's a calling.
Yes, it's life.
Other shelter systems we'll talk about is things like the Dutch Army tents. So we'll kind of encompass tents as a whole. So a lot of popular ones are, you got your Dutch Army. I know Jigglypuff Gus has the French F1. I'm a big fan of the USMC Diamond brand. So a Dutch Army, you're looking at about £45. An F1 French tent, I think you're looking at about 40.
Yeah, 45. You can pick them up now and again for about 35 quid.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard. I was trying to cost up some of these things earlier, and it massively depends on where you're at and who you're talking to. Because Military Odyssey, so if anyone's not aware, in Kent, there's Military Odyssey, which runs every year, which is basically a kind of an annual festival where people get together and kind of celebrate military from across the ages. It's very similar to War and Peace, if anyone's ever been aware of that. But War and Peace is probably a little bit more focused on World War II, and I believe they've stopped running it now as well. Ironically, it was called the War and Peace Revival. Now it's no longer happening. But Military Odyssey, I highly recommend going to that. You can pick up some real bargains for bits of kit. Again, also go and support your local military surplus shops. At the moment, I'm down in Devon. Went down to the one in Honiton. Had a little chat with the guy down there. Absolutely wicked shop. Don't know how he makes any money because he doesn't sell anything online. He only does a physical shop. So, but I mean, also, hats off to him.
We've all bought stuff from Cadet Store UK. I'll tell you what, that is a dangerous website. No, I ain't gonna, like, the stuff that they have in there is good quality. None of it's surplus. Like, I think they do get a few surplus bits in now and again, but a lot of it is brand new, like good quality. Some of their things can be a little bit more expensive, but then like they've got a warehouse, like they've got a massive warehouse. And then you're also as well, you've got places like Prepper Shop.
Yeah,
like keep an eye out for them. They got wicked deals popping up now and again. So you can reduce the overall costs by looking in certain areas. And obviously with Prepper Shop, you get the 10% discount.
Yeah, using code NoFo10 at checkout.
NoFo10.
Which we still don't get any money for because we were silly in that when we set this up, we said we'd make no money. The USMC tent, if you're looking at that, I mean, the tent setups are very much dependent on what you want from your event. If you want a good quality tent, that's kind of a backpacking one, personally, I would recommend the Van Gogh Banshee, sort of 200, 300, depending on the size of tent you want. I have both had a 200 and a 300. I'd recommend the 300 because with any kind of tent, if it says 2-person, it's probably 1 person with some kit.
Yeah.
So if you get the one that's a 3-person, then you're going to have 2 people with a bit of kit in there. So that's a brilliant backpacking tent. You're looking to spend potentially sort of around the region of about sort of 90 to 100 quid on one, but it is bright green. Having contacted Vango for some reason won't make a camouflage tent, and I have no idea why, because if they made the Banshee in camouflage, they would sell so many of them. Such a good tent.
How heavy is your US Diamond one compared to the Banshee?
The Banshee weighs about 1.98 kilos. I think the US one is 5, somewhere between 5 and 7.
So quite a big difference.
Yes. The Vangos are literally just such a good tent. Like, they are proper good. But they just come in stupidly bright colors, which you don't want for a tent setup.
Could you spray it?
Well, you probably could. I mean, you could technically spray anything. Now, whether that's going to affect
that's what I was wondering. Is it going to affect
the waterproofing? I have no idea.
But I'm sure if you sprayed it with car spray paint.
Well, I mean, you could spray
cars
it with solid
are waterproof.
Guess, but...
Yeah. See, this is where you need Lance. Like Lance.
Yeah, where are you?
Can you spray it? Have you ever sprayed a tent? And what happens?
It's 4. Sorry, it's 4 kilos, the USMC.
That's still a big difference. That's still
which is a big difference. I mean, it's not something I would take backpacking.
Unless you split it between 2 of you.
Yeah, but I mean, even still, that's still 2. I mean, if you're comparing 2 kilos each as opposed to 2 kilos in just one person's bag, I mean, that's 2 kilos is an awful lot of additional weight to kind of spread around. But it depends on what you're after. If you want a proper camouflage tent, there aren't many about. Not that are decent ones. So you need to be very careful, because there are a lot of camouflage tents out there, but not all camouflage tents are made the same. You get some, you can obviously get the kind of the cheapo kiddie ones that are like 10, 15 quid, something like that. Probably have a waterproof rating of, I don't know, they probably
1.
suck in more water than it is if it rains. But it depends on what you need. So if you need a tent that you want to have a proper bit of space that's all encapsulating, you can't go far wrong with the Dutch Army. They're obviously a bigger tent, but they're bulkier to carry around, so you won't find people necessarily burgeoning with them.
No.
If you want a smaller, lightweight tent, then obviously backpacking tents are good, but you may have to kind of double it up with some camouflage netting or something like that if you want to throw something over the top to kind of dilute that luminous green.
Yeah.
Interestingly, I'm sorry, my headphones just fell. Interestingly, the Vango Banshee 300s, they used to come in a darker color, and then they had a kind of a flip around with a new issue of them, and then they all came out lighter. And the reason that backpacking tents are obviously lighter is because the majority of people aren't trying to go stealth camping with them, so you don't end up with people like out in the middle of the Dartmoor and stuff like that in a stealthy tent, because if you have an issue and you need to call in mountain rescue, you're fucked because you ain't never getting found. So that's the reason that they have kind of lighter color equipment, because obviously you want to be visible. But honest to God, if they did a camouflage one, they would be making bank. They proper would. Rage says don't spray a tent.
Okay.
Don't spray a tent.
Yes, Dad. John's got a good one. Like the Light Fighter, I've seen a couple now, and they are beyond nice. But last time I looked, they were like 700 quid.
So they are a lot cheaper. Because I, funnily enough, was looking this up earlier in the week. You can get one. I found one online for sort of about 300 or 400 quid. But you're still looking at 2.3 kilos. And a Light Fighter is generally, so they do single person and 2-person tents. So that's still heavier than the 3-person Vango Banshee. So while they're good tents, you obviously have to look at the other benefits as well. So the Light Fighter's got a really good modularity approach to it. So you can have like the cold weather kit, which is like another internal tent that you effectively put up within that. However, conversely, with the light fighter, you have to put it up with the inside first and then throw the fly over the top, which is all good and well unless it's raining.
Until it's raining, yeah.
Yeah. So there are, again, I don't want to sound like I'm just freaking working for Vango because I'm really not, but the Vango Pantry is an all-in-one fly and inner. So you can take the inner out, but you fundamentally pitch that tent with the outer in it. So there is no wet area inside, basically. So you can pitch that thing within sort of 2 minutes and you have a dry space to go into. Whereas if you are pitching any tent that requires a separate fly to be placed over the top, and the USMC is exactly the same. That is another one where you pitch the inner and then you pitch the outer.
Pitch the outer, yeah.
You just have to be careful.
Yeah, I think my little single like my little 2-man tent, you know, that single poled one. It looks like a clam shell. That's exactly the same. And that weighs nothing. That weighs like I could put that in my bag, don't even realise I've got it. But again, if it's raining, which is when you would normally want a tent, putting it up is it just sucks.
Yeah. So counter to the whole backpacking tent and tent solution, we're now going to talk about bivy bags. So not all bivy bags are bivy bags. You can get some that are basically just a plastic sheet folded like a big bin bag that you get into, and that will keep you dry.
Ish.
It will keep you dry-ish. So obviously bear in mind that they don't generally come with a kind of a top section. But you do have to be careful with condensation. So if you are in a situation where you are likely to be producing a lot of steam, I guess, for lack of a better term. So say your warm body, cold outside, or vice versa. So if you're really hot and it's cooler outside, you really got to be careful with that. Hang on, that wasn't vice versa. If it's really hot outside, no, never mind, ignore that. Basically, you just have to be careful with condensation. If you're in a big plastic bag, that moisture is going to have nowhere to go. It will go to the outside of that bag. It will condensate. Sorry, it will condense, and then you will end up with a load of water inside the bag. So you have to be really careful.
The one I really like and I really recommend is the Snug Pack one, the Elite Force one. Absolutely brilliant. It's a single layer, one directional fabric, and literally since I've had it, I've not had one morning where I've woken up with condensation in like on my sleeping bag. It's always kind of like just stuck to the outside. So I don't know if they've sort of got like a wicking technology that kind of draws it out. But absolutely phenomenal. They're quite expensive. They're about 45, 50 quid, I think, for their new ones. But honestly, it's probably one of the best bivy bags that I've ever bought. Like for just throwing your sleeping bag in.
Yeah. So obviously you've got as well surplus bivy bags. So the Snug Pack ones, I don't think were generally surplus. I might be wrong.
No, they're not.
But a Snug Pack, sorry, not a Snug Pack, a surplus bivy bag, you're probably looking sort of somewhere between maybe 20 to 30 quid. But if you're going to go down that route, personally, I was just looking at a hooped bivy. Now, what these are is if you picture a little children's tent, about 2 foot wide and sort of 2 foot long, maybe about a foot or two tall, that you effectively put your head in. And then the rest of your body is enveloped in this bag that's kind of sewn onto the edge of this children's tent. So with a hoop bivy, you're looking somewhere in the region of about £100.
So I've just had a quick look to double check my pricings. The Snug Pack waterproof bivy bag is, if you go, is like 70 quid. So that's shot up since I bought mine. But still, it's a very good one. Just make sure you get the right size. Yeah.
I mean, do you ever use your bivy bag without a basher? Out of interest.
Yes.
Even when it rains?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Fair enough.
But I've literally. So the good thing about the snug pack one is don't go for the they've got, I've forgotten what they call them, coffin shape, is it? Ones where
I think they use the word coffin shape.
I don't know, but you know what I mean. Like it goes down towards
envelope, or like a mummy tapered.
Yeah, like a mummy, like tapered at the bottom.
I don't think sorry, this is just amusing. I don't think any camping equipment supplier is going to go, right, so this is the coffin version.
Yeah. Oh, that's what I call it. I'll find one that describes it as coffin shape. But if you go for the square one, literally I've thrown my ground mat, thrown my sleeping bag in, pulled my Bergen down towards my head, and literally just got my raincoat and just thrown my raincoat over, and that was fine. A couple of hours skipping that.
Yeah. So that's more, I guess, like a temporary sleep, because I don't know about you, I generally tend to roll around a bit when I'm asleep.
Yeah. See, the good thing is, like, with that, it doesn't matter if you kind of like dig yourself a little bit of a hole, not too much, so the water comes in and you're floating around, because they're not that waterproof, I don't think.
Yeah.
But yeah, like just give yourself like a little, like scrape all the stuff to one side so it's quite tight, snuggy. But because you're not in a confined one, when you roll around, your bivy bag normally tends to stay where it is, because you've got your ground mat inside your bivy bag.
Yeah,
is the way that I find it. Works for me anyway. And then you just push all the stuff to the side and give yourself like a little.
I meant more in terms of like your rain cover. If you're using a raincoat or whatever as a.
But that's why you have it. You have it mainly over, like, you kind of put it over your like put it over your Bergen, and it kind of like hangs down to like below your waist.
I can just see me rolling around in my sleep, and I'll just capture it and then turn it over, and I'll just end up with a really wet head. So not suggesting that's not a bad system, but if you want a little bit more enclosure, then the hoot bivvies obviously are an option.
Yeah.
So a Dutch Army or British Army hoot bivvy, you're looking sort of around about £100 at kind of the low end. I think a few people are sort of saying that they got one. Terry said I picked one up from Odyssey last year for about 100. But they are claustrophobic. You do have to be careful with these. So if you do suffer from claustrophobia, you need to test these things before you go out on a MilSim, because you don't want to be out there dog tired and then stuck in a situation that's just going to give you absolute anxiety while you're in there. I don't generally find I suffer from claustrophobia as long as I have a decent airflow. So some of the hoot bivvies do provide sort of various venting and things that you can obviously have open. So the one thing that I've Russian Ratnik bivvy, which is a really
I love that one. That's a really good one. Yeah, because that's quite long for you. So so with that, when I tried a hoot bivvy, what I did, I put my Bergen down the end. So your Bergen kind of is pushed against the side, and then you've got the hoot bit, and it makes it feel less claustrophobic, if that makes sense. So you're basically adding another, because you've pushed your Bergen down to the end. I
didn't take the Bergen in with me in the hoot bivvy.
Oh, did you not?
No. So this is another thing to consider with bivvies. So if your bivvy opens from sort of the top end down, or as a kind of a clamshell, so the side comes off, you just need to be again careful with rain. The Russian Ratnik one is the one that I like using the most, and that is like literally you just unzip the side and the whole thing opens up, so all of your bedding is potentially exposed to the elements. So I generally run that with a basher over the top. So the bivvy's more there as a insect barrier, as well as like an extra layer of warmth. So it's providing that kind of bivvy bag, but the little tent above just kind of gives you that little bit of extra space. So because that way your head is covered from rain and things like that. They're not the best for claustrophobia. You do definitely need that airflow. If you don't have that airflow, you are going to struggle. And I know that for a fact because I had it laid out in my lounge. I got in the thing and I thought I was going to die. When I was out and about in the field with it, I don't struggle with that at all, because you have that kind of airflow running through it. I wouldn't suggest using it in a really hot Hot environment, you probably don't need it. That's a massive overkill for that one. So like an open bivvy, something like that would be better for you on that front. But I just find sort of just throwing a basher over the top gives you that space that you can then kind of have a little dry admin area. So that's where I generally tend to keep my Bergen.
Because some of the hooped ones now, I've seen a couple of them where they've got a hook, like they've got a loop, that you can pull it taut, so you do make it sort of
More like a tunnel.
Yeah, more like a tunnel, like a real miniature tunnel tent, which I thought was quite a cool idea.
Yeah. I mean, that's the other thing you can just do with a basher. So if you just get a large enough basher, you can actually form a lot of these shapes with a basher anyway. So you can make like a little, I always call it like the Toblerone tent. So it's literally just sort of the triangle sides. You can create like little teepees and all sorts of different shapes with a basher. So if you get a decent basher sheet, you can't go wrong. And you're talking what, 20 to 30 quid for
a decent one.
Well, I wouldn't say decent. I think you're probably talking more grade 3, 2, somewhere like that. Whereas a sort of a grade 1 or unissued or anything like that, you might be looking a little bit more nowadays, because I think the whole Ukraine war has really shot those prices up.
I haven't looked for a while because I've got 3, so I haven't really. You know what I mean? Like once you get 2 or 3, you think, oh right, well yeah, that's fine. I don't need to look anymore, and that's it.
Yeah, just be aware. So DD tarps are really good. They make some really good bashers. They are more of a plastic coating or a plastic material. So brilliant. They're really lightweight. They fold right down, everything like that. They do melt quite easily. Not a fault with DD tarps. You know, ultimately they're not anticipating you putting your basher in a position which could be burnt. But I have seen them used at MilSim events where people are lobbying pyro, sort of into camping areas and stuff like that. Both personally have had that done, but I've also seen other people kind of using them as a shelter, and they have just melted basically. So just be really, really careful if you're going to go down that route. I'm not sure how a British Army one fares up. I generally don't tend to want to ruin my kit, so I'm always a little bit wary about where I set it up. But if anyone's had any issues with a British Army basher melting, then let us know. I'd be interested to hear.
Yeah. Interesting fact. B&Q stock snug pack.
Really? That's interesting.
Yeah, I was literally looking at this, trying to bring up some details on the snug pack Stratosphere. You know, their version of the hoops, and it came up with B&Q.
Yeah.
And they sell a lot of stuff. Like they sell the ponchos, all the sleeping bags.
There you go. B&Q branching out into the outdoor market.
Yeah, there you go. So if you've got a discount with B&Q, pop over there.
Yeah.
Not that I'm sponsored by B&Q, but I just thought that was go and pick up your wood and a bivvy bag.
Just going into the comments, Rage says a lot of backpacking tents are green, some are lighter green, but the reason a lot of different backpacking tents are bright coloured is so they could be seen, which is exactly what Mike just said. Thanks, Rage. Controversial opinion. I wouldn't use X-issued stuff, especially tents, as soldiers are essentially animals, and God only knows what has been done in those tents, of which Chris said, Rage, you know it. So,
if you buy a second-hand issued army tent, go in with the blue light or black light first, and then just nope.
I'll never forget this one back. A story from Oscar. So a gent that we I know he listens to the show, but we met him at Op Phoenix, and he was saying that he bought it's either a sleeping bag or a what was it? It was either a sleeping bag or it was a bivvy bag. I can't remember if it was a hoop one or not.
I think it was a bivvy bag, because I remember
he said that he was struggling to get the smell out. You need to be careful on that one. That's the problem with military surplus stuff generally, isn't it?
Yeah.
But, Marky Mark said a decent basher is 40 quid plus now.
Wow.
And Chris says, Andy, do you remember the extension to your tent you made at Tuddenham? You based basher poles on a basher sheet.
Oh yeah. So my clamshell tent, took it out for the first time, and it started to spit with rain a little bit, and it hasn't really got like an awning section to like cook in, but it's got two. Yeah, the door's open, like the door opens as a double, and I was like, I've got a basher, got my basher poles, so I literally just pegged the basher over the top of the tent, but kind of slid it more forward, so it was sitting on the apex of the pole because the pole was external. So it wasn't touching the side of the tent, and literally just gave myself a little awning, basically, just sit there and cook my food in. That worked quite well.
Oh, bashers are such a versatile bit of kit. They really are. I mean, I've got one that I keep in my car permanently with some little collapsible poles and some pegs and paracord and stuff like that, because you can literally just whack a shelter up, you know, within sort of 10, 20 seconds if you absolutely needed to. You're right. You know, I've seen people who have had tents that have been flooded out. Again, just throw a basher over the top. Might affect the, depending on how old your basher and everything is in terms of the waterproofing. Sometimes, whilst the basher sheets are waterproof, water still sort of percolates through and then will run down the inside of the basher. So it's obviously not.
It's on the seams, isn't it? Because the seams,
and as soon as
the
you
seams
touch
go
it, that
before
can affect it and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So you have to be careful with that. But yeah, the seams have gone on my DD one actually. That was something I found out when we were at Camp Eversley, not Camp Eversley, Alpha Site, Gunman.
Right, yeah.
Which wasn't much fun because it was absolutely hammering it down with rain, and rain is just streaming down the inside of the tent, which was really helpful. But it's cool. It's cool. Rage says one of his mates shit in his boots on one of his deployments. So there you go.
And you still call him a mate. That is true friendship right
there. So yeah, in terms of shelter systems, that's kind of where you're sitting at. So just do your research. Make sure you're obviously aware of what you're buying and the kind of the pros and cons of that system. And if you're not sure,
everything's got pros and cons. Everything.
Oh, definitely.
There's not sure, just ask someone. Perfect.
Yeah. Ask Andy. Andy knows about hammocks.
I know about hammocks and a basher. That's about it.
Yeah.
And how to get free guns.
Yes, thanks, mate. But yeah, if you're going to an event and you're not sure, there'll likely be people there that have the experience. So just ask them in the chat beforehand. But whatever you do, just make sure you get comfortable enough. Don't necessarily have to sleep in it before an event, but make sure you know how to set it up. Make sure you understand kind of what you're going to do when you're there. Again, if you're going to go down the route of a hammock, maybe get an idea of the site before you kind of really commit to that one. But similarly with tents, you know, not every location is necessarily equipped for a nice flat kind of pad that you can put a decent sized tent up. It might be that a basher is more appropriate because you can just get that kind of linear profile along a contour. So just make sure you do your research and know what you're taking. Should we go on to sleep systems? Because I'm conscious that we've spent 40 minutes just talking about shelters. So just in terms of sleeping systems, sort of sleeping bags.
Just get a sleeping bag.
Yeah. Get a half decent sleeping bag. If you're looking at a snug pack one, you're probably looking at somewhere in the region of, I don't know, what did I write down?
Well, they go up to about 300.
You can spend hundreds of pounds.
Hundreds. Just get a decent one. But anything from Go Outdoors is a pretty good sleeping bag. Just don't just make sure that you've got anything over, personally for me, 3 seasons. Anything above 3 to 4 seasons, you're laughing. Because even if you get hot, you just unzip the bloody thing and you just sit there and let a little bit of airflow come in. But yeah, lightweight one. Anything from Go Outdoors, or I'll tell you what, Decathlon have got some good ones in at the moment. Some nice black ones they've got in. Well worth having a look at Decathlon if you've got one near you. But I'd say personally for me, I'd be looking at for a decent sleeping bag. I would personally be willing to spend, starting out, 100 quid. Is what I would allocate to it, because at the end of the day, if you don't have a good night's sleep, you won't enjoy the event. Personally, that's sometimes part of the event is you not sleeping, but getting those few minutes of comfortable sleep will
You don't want to be cold.
make a big difference. No,
definitely
will
don't want
make
to be
a
cold.
will make a massive difference between you enjoying it and not enjoying it.
And if you're a larger gentleman, one little tip that I've sort of certainly picked up is looking to expand the panels. So if you find that your sleeping bag is snug, expander panels are basically a little strip, and it depends on the brand. So I know Snug Pack do them, and I know mountain equipment do them. So they are basically a little panel that's probably adds about sort of 2 or 3 inches of extra an extra girth to your sleeping bag. It zips into the kind of the gap between the 2 zips, so it just gives that extra little bit, and you can actually stack them up.
Snug
so if
Pack
you want
actually, a
bit
lot
more
of theirs come with it now. Come
room,
with
do
an
they come with
inbuilt
it?
one.
Oh,
A few of them do, especially their I think the Elite Force range. They have a section that you can zip in. So you can either have it like really snug, but they have an inbuilt section that you can, like, they've got 2 zips, so you can have it like rolled in. That's a brilliant idea. But they do sell them separately as well. So if you wanted to make it even larger in your coffin shaped sleeping bags.
yeah.
But personally, I like being cocooned. I like having my sleeping bag quite tight.
Yeah, I
just
can't stand it.
because
I like
because
having
there's
the
less
ability
air.
to kind of move around a little bit.
Yeah. See, I quite like having a bit of an air cushion. So, but it's still like it's reasonably. So if I roll, I know that my sleeping bag rolls, but my bivy bag won't, if that makes sense. So my bivy bag is more. Also, get yourself a cotton liner, because it means you can just get into your sleeping bag reasonably dirty, and your sleeping bag doesn't smell like turds after a couple of hours. Right?
Yeah,
Because you
especially
you
with
take your
boots.
cotton liner out. Yeah, you can take your cotton liner out. It's lightweight. You can have 1 or 2. So if you have if you know that you're going away on a really wet, shitty weekend, you can get in there, warm up. It doesn't matter if it gets a bit damp, because you roll it up, put it in. The next sleeping, you have another one, and they're all washable. Whereas your sleeping bags are more harder to wash, and it just gives you that longevity of your sleeping bag.
I really like so I don't always use a cotton liner, but there are times where we've been on an event which, you know, we're basically kind of doing a bit of rolling stag. So it might be that you've got a buddy system, you've got a chance to get an hour's kip, but you're going to be kind of sitting in situ. You don't necessarily want to be taking off your boots and everything like that. So I have used them where you kind of just open it right up, so the feet are obviously kind of still enveloped.
Yeah.
Put your boots and stuff in the cotton liner before you put them in the sleeping bag, so you can kind of tuck yourself in around the corner, and you can kind of use it more as a duvet. But yeah, I mean, just going back, because Rage has disagreed with you, Andy. He says that you can get a very good 3 sleeping season bag for £50.
Oh yeah,
but they're going to be a little bit heavier. I think the point Andy was making is that that's just what he would want to spend.
Oh yeah, you can get them, like, you can get good ones, as you said, for 50 quid, sometimes less. But for me, I would be like, I would be wanting to spend that little bit extra to get that more lightweight, possibly a little bit more comfort to it. But if you're on a budget, yeah, 100%, you can get them cheaper than 100 quid. But that would be my sort of price range. Sorry if it was misunderstood.
I've had some really good ones. I really like the Snug Pack base ops and things like that. I had one of them break, so the zip went in the middle of the night, and I woke up with a proper freezing leg. I think the temperature on that event had got down to like -5, and it was not the time to have a sleeping bag break. Now, again, I always take like a whoopee or a jungle blanket, which I'd recommend people looking into buying, but it's not really a MilSim essential. That's probably more like a little sort of luxury kind of bonus item. But I take one every time I go to a MilSim, I take it camping. I've got one in the car permanently. You can use them as picnic blankets and stuff like that as well. They're really great. Literally got one on the floor at the moment where Poppy was eating her dinner on the floor earlier. Not like we had a table. She just wanted to sit on the floor to eat.
No,
but they're
just
really good.
To eat on the floor in a trough, people.
Yeah, but they're really good. They're really good. And having that meant that you kind of just got in the night a little ability just to kind of throw an extra layer on. If you've got a thinner sleeping bag, maybe like a season 2, season 1, you can double that up with a whoopee as well. So you can obviously put the whoopee on the inside, and that's going to provide that extra thickness. Wouldn't rely on it on the outside. I don't make my child eat off the floor. I wouldn't put the whoobies and things on the outside of the sleeping bag just because they tend to slip off in the night. So if you're going to do that, you probably want to look at sort of securing that in some way. It's a lot better to be inside the sleeping bag and just kind of really utilize that insulation. But I actually went down the route of spending sort of £300-400 on a sleeping bag in the end because I go cramping quite a lot. Cramping, yes, I go camping quite a lot. This one, the one I've got now, goes down to something like -32, -40, something like that. I use it all the time. Like I don't really differentiate between the summer and the winter. What I generally tend to do in the winter is I just kind of use it as like a duvet layer. So it's quite a thick duvet, but I'll just literally open it up. I'll sleep on whatever I'm sleeping on. If I get cold enough, I'll just pull a bit more on, pull a bit more off. In the winter, it's been great. Like literally, it's so warm. You can properly get into it. And I've never been cold in that sleeping bag. It's just dog's bollocks, but you don't need to spend that much on a sleeping bag. It's just for me, I really like the idea of it being down, so it can compressed right down. I can get this thing into sort of a, probably the equivalent size of like an A4 folder, maybe a sort of like 6 inches thick. So I can slip that inside my Bergen with no problem at all. And it means that, with wild camping or anything like that, I know that I'm going to be comfortable because I've got the ability that, whilst potentially overkill, I know for me it's something that's important. So I know that I can stay warm in the middle of nowhere if I need to, basically.
Yeah, see, that's the same as me.
I just really like the expanded panels. I've got 2 or 3 on my sleeping bag because I like it's almost like a little mini tent. I can kind of get into it and then I can. That was a really weird thing to signify. But for example, if something's broken or if I need to fix it, I can put a head torch on. I can sit there and do it. But I'm warm because I'm fully in the sleeping bag.
Is anyone else enjoying it? Yeah, I was going to say, is everyone else enjoying you freezing? Because there was one like this a minute ago.
Okay. Yeah. So for example, I had I think my pistol went down at an event. So I was literally in my sleeping bag. Like I kind of got on all fours and I was able to do it in the sleeping bag, which was quite handy. So, but you do have to, sorry, Rage. I knew as soon as I said down, you do have to be careful of down in case it gets wet because it keeps the moisture. It's very, like once down is wet, that's the insulation gone. If you can use one of the more kind of insulating, not insulating, man-made fibers. Yeah, then they don't generally struggle.
Because that's what I've got. I've got the Snug Pack minus. It goes down to the comfort rating goes down to -40, and I do exactly the same as you.
Massive though. That's the problem. Like they so big. Are that big, whereas I can literally get my down one down to like that.
That's the thing that
for the people listening, I'm holding up my hands to roughly indicate a shape.
Yeah, roughly a sausage
as mentioned
size.
Earlier.
Yeah, but that's the thing that takes up most of my kit. That's the one thing that takes up a lot of room.
Yeah,
everything else kind of fits around my sleeping bag. My sleeping bag goes in first.
See, I don't have everything else, and that's a real benefit. Real benefit. Like I can get it into. So I generally use a Highlander. I think it's like 4 litre, maybe a 6 litre bag, a dry bag. So I can get the whole thing in there. I can compress all the air out of it, squeeze it all up, and it's literally this little pack that I can just slide in and out. I know it's waterproof, everything like that, and there's no issue. I don't have all of this. You've got to ram your sleeping bag right down to the bottom, everything like that. So I've got a lot more space in my Bergen that I can access stuff.
See, the one thing that I have recently learned is not putting it in the when I first started with the man-made fiber ones, I was keeping them in the compression bags because I thought that like having a compression bag will take up less room, but it doesn't. Have a liner inside your bag and then just stuff it into the bottom of the bag, and that way you know that it's taking up as much room as possible, and then you just put your stuff on top of it in separate dry bags.
See,
That was a really good tip that someone told me. I can't remember who it was. I think it might
disagree
have been
slightly
Lance.
with that. I think a compression bag by volume you do get a smaller size sleeping bag. I think the advantage, as you say there, though, is the fact that you're utilizing the whole of the bag, because the compression bag will make it a tic tac, whereas the bottom of your Bergen is not tic tac shaped. So if you can just squash that thing down, so I agree with you, but I think, and it's something that I've always thought about whenever people advise this. I think the advantage that you get out of not using the compression bag is certainly more of an advantage, but I don't think it makes it as small as the compression.
It doesn't make it as small, but I don't know. It's weird. I can get more stuff into my Bergen if I don't use the compression bag.
Well, that's because it's the odd shape, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because you can't fill the voids with it, basically.
No.
Oh, sorry, I'm not saying you're wrong. I just
No. Yeah.
The compression bag. Compression bags are obviously good if you want the thing as small as possible, because it is really ramming everything down. But yeah, right. Sleeping bags done. Bergens, you definitely need a Bergen if you're going to be doing a MilSim for the most part. And I say for the most part because obviously there are MilSims where you don't need to Bergen in. So they might be, for example, if you're doing a urban type event, HQ Airsoft. I know sort of Defiant have done a good few of those recently. Longmore, again with Defiant, if you've got that kind of ability that you can take a box of stuff, you can get plastic boxes and crates from.
But B&Q for like 30 quid. I still use my Bergen a lot of the time.
I still use it too, but I'm just making the point that you don't need it.
No.
So
I'm saying if you're going to go, but if you're going to go down to say B&Q, and you bought 4 boxes to carry all your stuff in, why not just buy a Bergen? Because you get all your stuff in there. But that's me being.
Yeah, no, that's right. Sorry, I was just trying. I'm really blinding myself. I'm using these car lights that I've got that I use for my boot as a way of illuminating myself, and I'm slightly regretting it because I can't see.
He's going to have a suntan by the end of it.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going down the route of a Bergen, you can spend probably like 50 quid on a Bergen. It does massively depend on the grade that you want to get. So I've seen an uptake recently in surplus shops that will sell you a sort of grade 3, grade 2 with the premise that you can spend a little bit of time and effort to kind of fix up little bits and pieces on it. If you're going to be looking at sort of grade 1 or unissued, then you're obviously going to be spending more money if you want the latest one. So if you're talking like the Virtus Mark 3s, you're going to be looking maybe in the region of 150 to 200 when you start adding rocket pouches and things onto the side of it as well. But you can get a decent DPM Dutch Army Bergen for somewhere in the region of like 50 quid. Again, Military Odyssey is a really great place for those. Other Arms Bergen from Stephen, that's not a bad shout. So yeah, if you want a Bergen setup, that's how much you're kind of roughly looking at. You can use civilian kind of backpacking rucksacks, I guess, as well. They don't really call them Bergens; they're kind of a backpacking rucksack.
They're a hiking bag, I think they call them now,
bags, which generally tend to be lighter. They're obviously going to potentially have the issue again of being bright colors, but it depends what you want, because if you've already got one of those, camouflage backpack cover, job done.
Yeah, or spray it. Am I allowed to spray it, Rage?
Stop spraying everything.
Spray everything. I feel like I need to take Lance's place. Just rattle can all your gear. Warrior X300, very good. I had one. I didn't like the silk lining on the inbuilt rocket pouches, just because nothing stayed where you wanted it to fucking stay. So what I ended up doing was lining the inside with a bit of Velcro and just buying Velcro pouches. That was easy enough to do. Like, you can do that yourself if you know how to sew a little. It doesn't have to be anything. And bit of thread end around the outside and a bit of spray glue on the inside. it can be done.
Yeah. I mean, the X300, forgive me if I'm wrong, that's about 200, 250.
So they've gone down in price recently. Give me 2 seconds. I'll bring one up. But they have gone down in price quite a lot.
Rage said, I wouldn't spray your Bergen, but you could. I mean, arguably, you could spray anything. Whether it'll work like as well is another thing to be seen. But yeah, so basically, if he finds it,
X300 is mystery price. It doesn't tell you. Cheers. Thanks.
Okay. I mean, you can go as much to spend as a full, like, I don't know, like £400 or £500 on a beast burger from JJ's if you really want like the full tailored one.
Yeah.
If you're starting out, you're probably not going to go down that route. If you are more experienced and you're looking for an upgrade, then it might be something you want to consider. Ultimately, with a lot of this, it does depend on where your priorities lie with your finances.
So they're on deal at the moment. They're £199.95p.
There you go.
With 10% off if you use code Warrior10.
Nice.
There you go.
There you go.
With free shipping on orders over £20 in the UK mainland. And now you know.
Ray said, I never had an issued pack that was comfortable with weight than the ones you can buy for hiking, climbing, and as such, which is completely true. It just depends, I guess, if you want to go down the route of that kind of realism approach or not, which some people do, some people don't, and there's no right answer to it, to be fair.
I'm sure many of our veteran listeners will agree that military grade is not always the best grade.
It's the cheapest, isn't it?
It's the cheapest grade that won't kill you.
Military grade, all that military grade means is that it's met a certain level of requirement for by the cheapest bidder. So that's not necessarily the best product. But what is an interesting point, and we'll just bring this up. So Stephen Whitehead said there's loads of old brick kit on Facebook Marketplace with blokes selling old DPM Bergens for like 25 quid. So there are some proper good bargains that you can find on Marketplace, Vinted, and things like that. You just have to be searching it regularly and kind of set up little saved things. eBay's another good one, although it's a little bit harder because people obviously, when they're selling stuff on eBay, they generally look up how much it is. But there's been a few instances recently where I've actually felt bad for the people selling them enough that I've contacted them and told them that they're selling it for too cheap because they're too far away for me to go and buy it.
Nice.
Well, they're too far away for me to go and buy it.
If you could buy it, you wouldn't say anything, would you?
Well, no. To be fair, if I'd have bought it, I would have gone and given them a little bit more because there was a Mark 6 issued helmet in pretty good nick. I'd probably say grade 1 that someone was selling for a tenner. I was like, these are properly going for like 40 to 50 quid on eBay at the moment. Like, you don't undervalue yourself. And then they came back and said, I really appreciate it, but we're just trying to get rid of it quickly. I was like, I would have bought that off you, but it's, it's so far away. You're like 40, 50 miles away. I was like, is it? And I already have enough of these helmets anyway. So I was like, I'll save that. But I've seen JJ's kit. So there was there was somebody up in, I think it was the Midlands, selling some JJ's kit, which was proper nice, and that was massively undervalued as well. So you can get some really good bargains. You just need to kind of be on it and just kind of check it every once in a while. Instead of spending your evening just watching the news, browsing Facebook or whatever like that, just jump onto Marketplace, search military surplus stuff like that. You might be able to find a little bargain on there.
Also, do really like on eBay. The one thing that I've found, which is quite a sneaky little search, and I'm willing to share it with everyone, is literally in the search bar, just put British Army stuff, and literally the gold mine that just pops up is phenomenal. Like you've got someone, unfortunately, that has passed away and their family's clearing out and they've got no understanding of military stuff. And like, I've picked up a Class A USA uniform, which normally go for about 200, 300 quid. I picked it up for 50 quid. Like it's, you got the way I do it is you just do dumb, simple searches. Like if you keep it
Misspelling things.
Yeah.
Don't put it military. Apparently, L and K are quite close together. Put micatory, and stuff comes up with there as well where people have spelt it wrong.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
that's another little good one. So yeah, if you're after cheap kit, there are definitely ways to find deals. But just don't get ripped off as well. Don't pay through the nose for something that someone's telling you is absolutely amazing. And it's do your research on whatever you're buying.
Like James has literally just proved a point on eBay for an X300, 160 quid posted.
Yeah.
So there are deals to be had out there.
But
and shop around.
It might be an ex-soldier that's selling that someone's shatting it.
Yeah. But shop around as well. Don't go, oh, right, well, I want to buy some Warrior gear. I'm going to go direct to UK Tactical. Like, there are other people out there. There are other, like, there's the Warrior Facebook group, buy and sell group. You can pick up some cracking deals on that. Like, some people are like, oh, I don't need these pouches anymore. Give us a tenner for postage and like we'll call it quits. Like, you can proper get away with some real good stuff.
Right, I'm conscious of the time, so let's crack through. So in terms of sleeping bags and things as well, we've obviously covered. One other thing that you will definitely need to look into is a ground pad of some sort. Highly recommend just basically getting the old school camping foam. You can pick those up for like a £10 or £15.
Or one of the Dutch inflatable ones.
Or the Dutch inflatable ones.
I've got 3 now. But if you get an inflatable one, make sure just pop down to Halfords and buy a puncture repair kit.
Yep.
And keep that in your kit. Just keep it in your kit.
I just use a bit of hot glue and some Gorilla Tape. So it was actually something my brother did. So it depends on where the puncture is. I had one that was literally right in the middle of the pad. Literally a little bit of hot glue, some tape over the top, job done. It hasn't leaked since.
But you can't do hot glue out on site.
No. This is obviously a repair posting, but the benefit of obviously having a self-inflating one is that you have an element of foam there anyway. Puncture repair is good because obviously you can deal with it in fitting.
You can just deal with it there and there.
But if you haven't got a puncture repair kit and you get home, you can still fix them.
Yes.
It's not the be all and end all.
Buy a puncture repair kit.
Something else I wanted to make. I mean, you can go down the route of like there's the German Army multi-mat. There's a new one that's come out that I saw on Vakanda, which is a kind of a ground pad that's got arms. Or like it's like a wing almost. So it's you've got your ground pad, but then you have like 6 inches of extra material running off either side. And the idea is that you can kind of almost create like a little tubbed approach if you want to. Right. You can have like a little bit of extra space for admin stuff like that. So if you're obviously laying on wet ground, it kind of gives you an extra bit of a scope there. But they are quite bulky. There's the US military do some really good ones, which is it's not the multi-mat, but it's kind of that corrugated stuff.
Yeah, the fold-up ones.
Yeah, like the Z pad, I think they're called. So yeah, I mean, fundamentally, if you're starting off, just get yourself a very cheap one, and then you can just roll that through and sleep on that. It's not necessarily going to be the most comfortable, but it will give you an opportunity that you can kind of find out what you want to upgrade to at a later date. So that's kind of that. The only other thing I wanted to talk about weather gear, Andy, is raincoats. So something that a lot of people, and I know someone in particular question, it wasn't funny. I'd forgotten about it until just then when you laughed. You definitely need to consider having a decent rain jacket if you're going to be going on a MilSim. We've done both urban and rural events, which the weather has been absolutely horrendous. A few people in the chat, I can attest to having spent long evenings with them huddled under bashers, just being belligerent to weather. Like, we're not going home. We're MilSimmers. We can sit out in the weather.
Trying to keep your AEG close so it doesn't start.
Don't spark the battery. The one particular event at Longmoor with Legion, funnily enough, it rained pretty much persistently the whole weekend. We were on stag, we were out on patrol. Every time we came back on patrol, we were having to change our clothes. Like, it was that wet, regardless if you had rain gear on or not. But the rain gear obviously helps. You can get yourself a second hand Gore-Tex jacket, like the MTP ones, for £30, 30, £40. You can possibly get them cheaper, but you know, you can get something. It doesn't take a lot, and you've just got that extra rain layer on.
The one thing that I swear by is poncho.
Yep.
Just make sure you've got like ponchos. They go like you can pick them up off Amazon, like camouflage ones, and they're actually pretty decent. For about the same sort of price, but they wrap up so small, you can literally just pick that in the pocket, and if it starts raining, you throw it over you and your kit. Especially if you're like if you're marching out with your Bergen and you don't want to take it off, you can literally just pull the pouch out, throw the poncho over, job done, and then you can tuck down somewhere, keep yourself out of rain.
And you can use it as a secondary basher.
Yeah,
like you can obviously tie off the neck piece and everything
yeah,
like that.
a lot
And
of
use
them
that as
have
a
got.
sheet. Yeah, I mean the only thing I find with the poncho is, and you're right, actually, that is a much cheaper solution than a jacket. But I do find with the poncho, if you wear it for long enough, you get an awful lot of condensation build up, and then it's almost just as wet under the poncho as it is over the top of the poncho.
Only if you don't do the sides. So I tend to not do the sides, so I tend to just wear it like a big
sheet.
Yeah. And where it naturally folds, it stops the rain from getting in, but you've also got a bit of airflow. I've never really done the poppers up on the side.
Yeah,
that's just the way I
that's just how you roll.
run it. That's how I roll. that's how I pop.
Yeah. I took a poncho with me to Dartmoor. It was a properly sunny weekend. It was absolutely lovely, but we ended up using it as a sunshade because it was just so hot up there. You're out in the middle of nowhere. You can literally throw that up, and we just had a bit of sun cover for a while. So, yeah, poncho's a good shout. To be fair, I hadn't even thought about the poncho. So get a poncho instead of a raincoat. Job done.
That's why I'm here. You can pick them up off Amazon. I bought a set, so it came with a whoopee sheet. And the poncho, it's in. They do loads of different colors. I think I went for MTP because that's just what my kit is. And I think that was that was 80 quid. And I've used the whoopee more than I've used the poncho, like the whoopee blanket more than I've used the poncho because it's waterproof as well on one side. The poncho, the whoopee blanket that comes with it, absolutely cracking deal. I thought. Yeah,
it's a good shout. I do like.
Just don't buy your iPro. Just don't buy your iPro from Amazon.
Yeah, no. To be fair, we're not covering that within this show. But if you
I'm mentioning it every episode now until idiots start understanding.
Yeah. Right. So we've got you to the event. Obviously, you've got your sleep set up. You've got your shelter set up. We talked about burgers, things like that. We'll talk about cooking in a second. The only other thing just to bear in mind is obviously the cost. So if you're going to be starting out to go to MilSim events, they're obviously more expensive than your normal skirmish. So skirmish days typically tend to range between sort of £20 to £30 a day, as your kind of your normal walk on. A MilSim event for the whole weekend, and it does depend on how much gameplay you've got, the size of the site, how many players, etc., like that, because that all factors into cost for the event. But you're probably looking somewhere between the region of sort of 80 to maybe 150, depending on what that event facilitates. Basically,
I'd say normally they sit 150 would be.
That's quite high.
That's quite high. I'd say normally you're looking at around 80 to 100. But then again, like if you're spending 30 quid on a game day and you're only there for 6 hours or whatever it is, but you get 24 or 48 hours for 80 quid. If you actually look at it like that, you're only really spending an extra 10 or having longer airsoft.
Yeah.
Ings. Airsoft ings.
Airsoft ings.
But that's it. Yeah.
So yeah, just factor that into your costs, basically. So it will be massively dependent on where you're going and the like, but that's important. Right. So for the last bit, I wanted to talk about cooking. So for the most part, you're there. You've already kind of got your airsoft kit, etc. We're not going to kind of burrow too much into that. We kept you dry. But cooking's quite important because there's nothing worse than being a wet day. You've got no sort of warm food or drink at all. You might not drink warm drinks. I know this one doesn't, but most normal people like having something vaguely warm every once in a while. I'm really upset, Rage, and I'm so sorry. I don't have the sound box today.
Oh, hang on.
So Rage says,
Tranja.
That's not
was
a bad
close?
copy.
That was not bad.
I'm going to give you that one. That was pretty darn close.
I hope I did you well, Rage.
So there are a number of different cook setups that you can have. So I don't know if you're going to disagree with my list, Andy. I've kind of boiled it down, pardon the pun, to a few little basic ones. So the first one I was going to mention is the hex stove. So these are the proper little thin aluminium kind of fold up stoves that you can buy. A number of different people doing. Oh, sorry, Ray says I'm so let down. Thank you, Andy, for being better than Mike.
That's okay. That's just that.
I'm going to have that on holiday.
I am going to have that.
This is my travel microphone.
You know when you see the quotes, I'm so let down, and then I'll have by Rage.
Anyway, so the hex stoves, you can get a hex stove for about £8. They can run off. I don't know if you can still buy it, but like obviously the Dragon Fuel, and there were other compounds that you could use.
They still pop up.
That you can. I think there are alternatives that aren't the ones that are now banned because it's a controlled substance or whatever. But anyway, so you can use sticks and things as well in those, and you've got your mess tin set. You can just get stuff boiling.
See, with that, and I know we were very lucky to be given one by Des Catty. He's real small.
Oh, that's a Tranja though. We were talking about hex stoves. The hex stove's the little fold out aluminium block.
But you can still use that.
Oh, I guess you could.
Literally. That's what I use. I literally, when I want to heat something up, if I'm using it like one of my cups and I'm not using the fold out one, the flexi
stove,
flexi stove, which is basically the same thing but slightly different. Literally, that's what I use. I take that with me, like, and fill that up with a bit of methylated spirits or strong alcohol.
That's not a bad shout. I mean, I was looking at it as just having it on its own, but yeah, you're right. You having that, you can use that as a stand or whatever.
Yeah,
there's no harm in that at all. Tranja, obviously.
Tranja. That was not as good as that first one.
That wasn't as good. A Tranja, you're looking to maybe spend about £15 on. You can get them cheaper if they're second hand and things as well. And depending on where you get it from. But Tranja is basically like a little methylated spirit stove. So obviously you can just open up the little cap on there, put your methylated spirit in, or if you can keep the methylated spirit in the stove as well, like that, you've obviously got a little cooking platform there and then. And then pocket stoves. So if the little pocket stoves that you can buy, a number of different companies make them. I know Van Gogh, Coleman, they all make these kind of little pocket stoves. There's one on Amazon that you can buy that's like the smallest thing imaginable. I have seen someone try to use a big pot on there and it has fallen off. So just be careful of how, it's great having something small, but there is an element of how you use it.
Yes.
That requires a little gas canister to go on there, so you can just get your gas canister, which you can get different sizes and different prices. But you're looking sort of maybe £4 or £5 for a gas canister. So that's kind of little small basic setups. Mess tins, you're looking maybe.
See the one that you forgot. The one for you.
I haven't finished, but I was just. What have I missed out? Go for it.
On the cooking system.
My light died. Okay, sorry. Carry on.
Is the what they FRHs?
The flameless ration heaters. Yep.
If you've got,
I'll be back in a second. Carry on talking.
What is he doing, children? Now he's muted himself. Right. The flameless ration heaters. They are literally. I actually quite like them. If you're running a ration pack or something that's basically a boil in a bag, you just put it in, add a bit of water, I always put a little bit of salt in there as well, just because it makes the magnesium heat up a bit more violently, and you can have a meal heated within a couple of minutes. Takes up less room. They are quite I think you can pick them up from preppers for about £1, I think they are, but they are one use. So you do, if you're having like 3 meals out in the field, you need to make sure that you've got your 3 there. But I'm a big fan of those. I actually do quite like them. I think for a quick heat up meal without you having to set anything up, you can literally just throw it in, throw a little bit of your water that you're already carrying with you, and you're done.
You do have to be careful with age of those. So I've had a few that are quite old, and they just don't. They do still heat up, but it doesn't really kick out a lot of heat. And
did you add your salt?
I did add a little bit of salt actually, because it was actually, funnily enough, at the little camping weekend we did the other day, and I remembered the little trick that you told me.
Yeah,
and it didn't make any difference.
Oh, so that was an old one then.
Yeah, it was pretty old. So you do have to be careful with those. So I mean, they're really good if you're on an event and you maybe light discipline or anything like that. Just be careful, because obviously there aren't always situations that you can have a jet boil running. And the flameless ration heaters. Well, the jet boil is obviously like light and noise, because you're sitting there, right, guys, we're going dark, and then all of a sudden you get
yeah. Especially if you've got like 4 or 5 guys trying to brew up a coffee, it literally sounds like an F1 trying to take off behind you.
Yeah. Right. So the other
ones, even then, like the flameless ration heaters, they're loud. Like if you do the bag up too tight, they just start whistling.
Yeah. And they pop.
Yeah.
But right, so yeah, I mean, if you want quiet, then you definitely want to be going down the route with like a little hex stove or the Trangia or something like that. I mean, you can just have a little open fire as well if you've got mess tins. You can work a fire suitably that you can obviously use the coals and things. Mess tins, you're looking at about £10 for a set of mess tins. There are different qualities of mess tin, and I would highly recommend getting a relatively reputable brand. Now, the reason being is that it's massively different on the softness of the metal that they use. I've had some that literally I can just sit there and bend them, no problem at all. Whereas others are bendable in the long run, but ultimately they have that kind of greater resistance to it. So you can kind of, what are you doing?
Readjusting myself, I slid down and now I castrated myself. So I was trying to do it subtly without.
No, that's fine.
That was getting a bit painful.
No, that's fine. Talking of jet boils, so there's 3 different versions of a jet boil I want to talk about. So a jet boil, for all intents and purposes, is a stove system that sits on top of a gas canister and then has an integrated pot that you can detach. I think that's probably a reasonable summary. So going up in price from the bottom. So Fire Maple, I've seen already that there's a lot of love in the chat for Fire Maples. They are a good bit of kit. They are a massively cheaper version than jet boils. So Fire Maples, you're looking at about 60 quid for a Fire Maple. Jet boil, I'm going to call them jet boils just because that's effectively what they are. But the Fire Maple brand version of that is pretty good. Marky Mark, Fire Maple's brilliant. Rage says, I have the jet boil pans, Mark, and bought some Fire Maple ones, and they are just better than the jet boil ones. I'm so impressed with the Fire Maple stuff. Rage says also the Fire Maple one. Fire Maple is just as good, if not better, than jet boils. So yeah, definitely a saving to be made there. If you want to go down the route of having a jet boil, there's obviously different jet boils that you can get. So they do like a big pot, they do smaller pots. But for the most part, you're looking around sort of £100 for a jet boil. And then if you want to go even more than that, there's something called the MSR set of kit, which is like the wind burner, and they do a pocket rocket and things like that as well. The equivalent MSR one's about £150 for a wind burner.
Wow.
Yeah. I have an MSR wind burner.
Yeah, I knew you would.
So the reason being, I for probably like 5 or 6 years just used a Coleman pocket stove, basically. I combined that with a Stanley pot, and I could get the burner, the gas canister, and everything within the Stanley pot.
Nice.
So that was effectively my cook setup, which was really, really good. But it's effectively a poor man's jet boil system. So I was like, you know, I'm gonna look into getting a jet boil. Spent a bit of time researching. There wasn't as much information about fire maples for me to compare against, so I did just do my comparison between jet boils and MSRs. The MSR has a more consistent boiling time. The jet boil is really quick when it's not low wind, but in high wind scenarios, it can be quite like slow to heat up, whereas the MSR are very consistent with how they work. So whilst they're slower, it's always slower, if that makes sense. Like it's always that's poor. Whilst it's slower, so it takes, I think it was like a minute to 2 minutes for a jet boil to boil water. The MSR was like 5 to 6, but it was always 5 to 6, whereas the jet boil in high wind scenarios struggled. Ray says I own all of those stoves. Oh, Andy's gone. Have I frozen?
No, you've frozen. Well, I'm still here. Well, I think I'm still here.
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, but you're just not moving.
Yeah, cool.
It did this a minute ago.
We'll carry on going.
Yeah, we'll carry on.
Come back in. I mean, fundamentally, you don't need to spend that much on a stove setup straight away. There's advantages to kind of the jet boil-esque kit, but fundamentally, you're going to be using boil in the bag stuff. You're not going to be doing loads of cooking or anything like that. You don't ever really want to put anything other than water into a jet boil anyway, because you will just mess up the pan. The cook pots and everything like that you can use, but if you've got the all-in-one setup, then you don't really want to be kind of messing around with potentially affecting that. In my view, other people may do different things with them, but yeah, that's effectively.
Plus, it's a pain cleaning it out on site. Like you've got to take a whole different set of kit, which is one thing why I quite like the Flemish ration heaters, because it's literally in. You've got your but
you can't cook anything other than bags in there, do you?
I've never tried.
You're not cooking. You're not cooking like a stir fry on a flameless ration heater, are you?
I'm going to give it a go.
Oh, that would be wet and dangerous.
If the stir fry was in a bag, yes.
Yeah. Ray says you can get pot stands for all those types of things, and then you can obviously use pots. The MSR is a slightly challenging one because the MSR is a really fiddly setup with how it cooks. So you can't just use a pot stand, like a generic pot stand on the MSR. But by all means, if you want to go into that in more detail, you're more than welcome to. And I'm not going to go into it today. Highly recommend looking at the Flexi stove if you're interested in little stove setups. They are.
That thing, I've fallen in love with that. After our Op Phoenix, that thing was spot on. Like literally boiled up the water within minutes using the Dazcati little Trangia thing. And then once I'd had my dinner, I literally just threw a load of sticks in on top of it, and it just kept all the heat in. Like very directed. No one could see the flame. Absolutely odd. I wish they'd put those into production. Like I wish they did more.
So you can buy them. If you go to flexistove.com, they are available for purchase. They are not necessarily mass producing them. So it looks like they're sort of doing relatively small batches. But if you are interested, flexistove.com. And you can contact them and find out where you can get one. So there you go. Have we missed anything? If you're listening to the show, if there anything else that you might need to be aware of as a starter out, or perhaps if you've got any bits of kit that you bought post kind of playing, maybe you've been playing for 4 or 5 years and then you've gone, oh, you know what, I'm gonna improve that.
Socks. I know this is going to sound absolutely mental, right? No, but it's not because I've just bought some sealskins, but you can run around if you're moving from skirmishing over to MilSim, you can run around with just with socks that you bought from Asda's. But if you're going to be in those socks for a long period of time, get yourself a decent set of hiking breathable socks, because all you're going to do is you're going to turn your feet into manky pieces of meat at the end of your legs, and that's the last thing you want, especially if if your feet are getting damp. And I've seen people, and we've been on an event with some players where they've literally said, "Oh, we've just come over from skirmishing. We wanted to try it. We've got all the kit," and they're under their boots. They're wearing trainer socks because that's what they're so used to wearing when they're playing skirmishing. Whereas if you're in your boots for longer than 6 hours, then you're going to need a decent pair of socks. And highly, highly recommend getting a pair of set of sealskins. And sealskins, if you don't know what they are, that we have mentioned before, are waterproof socks that you can put on if your boots are wet.
You can't beat them, to be fair.
No. They're expensive. They're like 35 a pair now.
Yeah. Definitely wouldn't recommend wearing them all the time, but you do.
No.
Yeah. But if you get wet feet, or you are anticipating wet feet, and it depends on the methodology by which you want to use them. But fundamentally, they will keep your feet dry.
Yeah.
If you are in a wet environment.
Yeah. So I've bought a pair because when I go over to the States, we are doing a river hike, and literally it's through a canyon, and the whole hike is through a river. And I was like, well, I'm just going to wear, I know my boots are going to get wet. They're going to get filled with water. So I'm going to wear a comfortable pair of socks so I don't get any rubbing. But then the next day we're going for another hike, and I'm like, well, my boots aren't going to dry in time. So I'm literally going to put a decent, comfortable pair of socks on, and then the sealskins over the top.
You want to You want to have an investigation of boot dryers. I'll send you a link afterwards. There's this wicked bit of kit that you can basically stick in a boot, and it will help dry out. I don't know what percentage quicker it is.
Yeah.
Morning, Phil.
So it is in Utah. So I feel like if I just drive along with them dangled off the tow bar for a little while, they'll probably be pretty dry. But yeah, if that's my only set of boots, I'm just...
Yeah. No, fair play. Right, let's just go through some of the comments quickly. There was a couple of questions which we will try and answer as quick as possible. Rage says, then you... Oh, I'll just remove the comment. We'll come back to Rage's one. Apologies. He mentioned that what his biggest money pit was, and I can't find it quickly. Right, there's a question from Chris Pullen. Are you guys at the Epic Weekender? I won't be. Are you, Andy?
Epic Weekender? No. Because I'm at Blackstone. Because I'm at Blackstone CQB. I was given the choice by Hazel, and it was either Big Weekender or Blackstone CQB. And I thought my talents are better suited at Blackstone CQB.
I am unfortunately just too busy at the moment.
Yeah.
I would love to go to one or the other. But
it's not even enjoyable. I'm still working. I'm not even going to have fun. I'm literally working. Like that weekend is what I should have said.
But I have fun if you are going. It's going to be a wicked event. And let us know how it went. I'd be interested to hear.
Yes.
Right. Rage said, going back to his thing, biggest money pit, I think, is gear. People recommend too much Gucci gear, and it can feel almost like peer pressure to buy the real steel stuff and not repros, especially just for people starting out. Then you get the Cry, Arctrix, Through Dark stuff that people recommend, GBLS stuff, T-Rex Arm stuff and such. Definitely can see how people feel they need to buy this stuff, especially if they are... Oh, I didn't highlight the other comments. Sorry, Rage. So
if they are on a budget, I think
if they're on a budget, there you go. So yeah, I mean, when you're starting out, you don't need to crack on and buy the most expensive gear, because fundamentally it might not be your preferred option. Ultimately, you might want to change it up. So don't necessarily go the cheapest, because obviously, as we all know, buy cheap, buy twice. But there are good, cheap alternatives for bits of kit. And if you've got any questions, you can give us a shout. We'll obviously try and help. We can bring it up as a question on the show as well. So let us know, and then Yeah, wound his head.
I've got you tonight, Rage. I've got you in my capable hands. Don't worry.
Oh, it's because I'm not working on my normal setup. Right. Ray says we all know that you keep a basher. He means tarp in your car mic to dispose of bodies caused by your murder bag.
Yeah.
Yep. I've used so much stuff with my murder bag recently. Genuinely, it's been an absolute savior the last 2 or 3 weeks. There's so many times I've gone, I've got that in my car. Job done.
Yeah.
Jigglypuff Gus, are any type of events okay with sleeping in a car? Octo.
Yeah, Octo. Some of the Rift events. But personally, I feel that I not Octo, but I think if you're sleeping in your car, you're missing out a little bit on some of the experiences that you might get. Like we said, like a decent sleeping bag and a roll mat, you can spend under £100. And they would be the two fundamental things that I would. For £100, you could quite easily get a roll mat, a basher, some basher poles, and a sleeping bag, and you'd be happy as Larry for under £100 or around £100.
I sleep in my car at some events if I can.
Yeah.
More for the fact of I am currently going through the process of trying to get my ideal car sleeping setup, so that just for my own personal preference, really. Just there's some events which not having to get a tent and everything out, especially if it's raining and then you've got to come back the next day or anything like that, it's just not worth the faff. If it's a full-on MilSim that you're going to be out in the field, then obviously you're not going to be sleeping in a car. So
yeah, especially when your car's like 6 miles away from where you're.
Yeah, I'll see you in the morning, guys. I'm just off a little sleep in the vehicle. Right. Some other things that came in. Ray says you can get synthetic fiber bags now that pack down pretty small. Not as small as down, but still damn small. Pretty damn small. You're going to pay a lot of money for them, though. Though James C says that you can also get water resistant down now, which I wasn't aware of. So I will be looking into that after the show.
Oh, they must coat the down before it goes into the bag then.
I mean, it does amuse me because ducks are obviously fairly water resistant.
Well, they're just buoyant, aren't they? But they spit on themselves, don't they? That's what they're when they're.
Is that what the water resistant down is? It's just duck spit.
Yeah, when they. Maybe they have to get them like
someone's sitting crap there. And duck spit. They're the two new products coming out.
Literally, someone's sitting there waiting. As soon as the duck cleans himself, he just runs along and plucks all the feathers. God, it's gone downhill quick.
Roscoe, you can also get scams, so be careful. Yes, do be careful of of online sales and things like that. Always pay with goods and services. Do not pay friends and family. If it's someone you don't know, you are basically just giving them the ability to take your money and run. So pay with goods and services. If they claim that they don't want to pay the extra, unfortunately, the way that goods and services on PayPal works is they can't actually realistically, under PayPal terms and conditions, ask you to pay the extra. They should include that within their cost. They shouldn't. Under the terms and conditions, you are effectively covering that as the seller. But let's be fair. If you're going to sell something for PayPal terms and conditions, you could just make it a little bit more expensive if you needed to. I know that breaches the terms and conditions. I apologize, but that's fundamentally a really good way of getting around it. To just cover that off. So there you go.
Or just sell to mates and get a nickname of quartermaster. Do you want to buy something? Yeah, right.
Oh, Ray said it's not the down; it's the material the bag is made out of that's waterproof.
Right, okay.
I wanted duck spit feathers. Stephen Whitehead says if you are going to get wet, then you can always consider an embassy golfing umbrella. Not necessarily the most tactical. He also said you forgot.
Some of them are pretty cool.
Yeah. Sorry, Chris said you forgot noshing rods. I don't know what noshing rods are.
I think he meant nods.
Nod,
maybe
nodding rods. I don't know. Chris, please tell me because I'm very intrigued to know what you meant.
Yeah.
Rage also said, no, wear the same socks until your feet rot and fall off, and then claim disability, and then you get more money to spend on airsoft.
Yeah, to be fair, if I had to lose any part of my body, I would want to lose my legs because I want a pair of blades. Like from the knee down, I'd be happy with.
Yeah. Oh, knife, fork, spoon. KFS.
Nothing rods.
I've never heard them called noshing rods. I mean, it makes sense. I guess noshing rods would be like chopsticks, but yeah. Anyway.
See, I just read that as nothing rods. Nothing rods.
Well, that he wrote noshing rods there though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Chris, it's past your bedtime.
Long more with Defiant Il Octo in October.
Neither for me.
I don't know if he's talking about asking us if we're going or car camping, or I'm not sure, but yeah, I don't know at the moment. To be brutally honest with you, I don't know what I'm doing. My life is in turmoil. So, right, if you want to get in touch with the show, you can do so on our. Oh, hang on, I've got to find it on our email of nofochat@hotmail.com. Our Instagram is @November_Foxtrot_nofo, and the website is novemberfoxtrot.co.uk, which you can jump on our contact box on there and you can send us a message. We have been looking at doing some more collaborative stuff with shops and bits and pieces like that. We don't have any new discount codes, but if you're not aware of the discount codes, we do have discount codes under our Intel section, as well as some other little downloads, bits, pieces on there at the moment. So feel free to jump on there if you want to make use of those. You can also contact us on our own individual Instagrams at 9volt Airsoft for myself, at @callsign_quartermaster for Andy, or if you want to get in touch with Lance, you can get him on at the _punished one, at the _punished _1_ on Instagram. So there you go. It's a heck of a lot easier to read on the screen when he's here. I'm not gonna lie.
I might change mine. I just put C_A_L_.
The Roscoe who won the tactical doodle comp, that was Pegasus. We have sorted out a little cheeky prize with him. Unfortunately, we weren't able to get him his actual thing drawn because it was far too complicated. But we'll try and get a copy of it on the show next week for you. So there we go. Other than that, Andy, have you got any closing words?
Oh, I get them.
Yeah, go for it.
Give way to one person when you're driving on every road, and you will be a happier person.
Okay. Weird and randomly out of context, but we'll go with it.
No, do you know what? I did it today. I was driving back. I was driving to work, and I was like, do you know what? I'm going to, if someone wants to pull out, I'll give way to. And do you know what? I had such a relaxing drive. If someone wanted to pull out, I'd slow down and let them cut. And I was so chilled when I got to work, and I was proper relaxed. And it is literally just letting people go. Just be relaxed. Treat other road users how you want to be treated. That is my new philosophy.
Fair enough.
Until I'm running late, and then if you get in my way, I'm mowing you down.
Right, next week we are going to be talking about attachments. So we are going to somehow do a live show talking about things attached to riffs that we can't show the riffs.
I know how I can do it.
Okay.
I can pull apart my MWS and just have the top MWS boop, 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 and just have the top receiver. Bet you can't do that.
I bet you I can with my swordfish kit off my MP.
Oh, I could use that.
Oh no,
you take that apart.
No, don't you dare. Right, join us next week, 8:00 on Wednesday. Hopefully, we will be back to normal operating procedure. I will have a setup instead of this lovely grey wall. So,
and I'll still be here,
and you'll be here.
Doing what I do.
We'll see you next week. Have a good week, and
see you next week,
stay
guys.
NoFo, ciao, and all that lovely stuff.
Stay NoFo. Laters. In it.
Goodbye.
Bye bye. Miss you, Lance.